Welcome back to the Crafter's Cauldron. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made this Gingham and Catherine's Wheel tarot bag and mat. I say bag, but there's no handles. I suppose you could add some handles. And also ignore my ends that I have not woven in. So this project is definitely intermediate to maybe advanced. I always hesitate to say that because I don't think I'm that advanced of a crocheter. I just like to learn weird stitches. So as you can see on the bag portion, we are using the Waistcoat Stitch so we can get a really nice dense fabric, and also I think that the color work just shows better, just looks better. So as you can see, the length works for 3 of these kind of regular sized tarot cards, and then I've got my little tarot guide app because I know nothing and always need to double check the meanings. This is the other one's tarot guide, #spawn, only because we made this app. So if you want to support us, please go to the iOS App Store and download the other one's tarot guide. It has readings of tarot cards and illustrations made by us. I'm very proud of them. I think they're really cute. Most of them are inside jokes to myself. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to make this lovely little bag and mat with a little tie there to secure it. And I'm really proud of myself. Okay, so to start with, I've got my 3 colors here, and the chart, if you're following along with the pattern, actually uses Pacific instead of the ice blue because I think it would look a lot better, but I did not realize that until I was halfway through making this, and I wasn't really pleased with how the colors were turning out. For our foundation row, I am going to do a foundation chain of 17 and then chain 1 at the end. If you don't like the foundation chain, you can absolutely do a normal chain. I just found that when I'm working in rounds starting from a chain, I can never keep my chain straight. So doing the foundation chain gives me way easier loops to go through when I'm working the next round, which will be down one side and around to the other. So this is round 1, we're just chaining 17 with a foundation chain, and then I'm just going to chain 1 with a regular chain at the end so that we're ready to start working around. Okay, so now we have our foundation chain done, and I'm just checking to make sure that it's roughly the length of my card. If you have bigger cards, you can absolutely add 6 stitches so that the Catherine's Wheel pattern and also the Gingham, they both are in multiples of 6. So if you need to add anything, I would do that. Go up to 52, or do I know how to do math? No, 54, 60, 66, something like that. So for round 2, I'm going to single crochet 16 across, and that should get us to our last foundation chain. And in this last chain, we are going to work 4 single crochets into that space. Then on the way back, we will repeat that, so 16 single crochets, and then 4 single crochets in our last chain. So there is 15, 16, and then in this last space, we're working 1. Well, let me double check my counting. We're going to work 4 into that space, and then we are going to turn our work and go back down the other side with another 16. Here we have the end of round 3. So now we've begun working in the Waistcoat Stitch. I just think that it's a really nice dense fabric and also puts a lot less tension on the hands from trying to really hold your yarn tight and put a bunch of tension so that you don't have holes. So I'm increasing, working 1 Waistcoat Stitch, and then increasing again. This will get us up to 44. As you can see, I do not actually end these rounds with a slip stitch, but that's more out of laziness. Since we are ending all of our gingham rounds with a slip stitch, it probably makes sense to end rounds 1 through 4 in the same way, just for consistency's sake. So now we are working on round 4, which is 17 single crochets, an increase, which is 17 waistcoat stitches, an increase, 3 stitches, and then another increase. So that ends up being 24 sets of stitches repeated, or 24 stitches repeated, and for a total of 48. So 48 is the number of stitches we're going to have the rest of the way up for the color work portion. And I'm just checking it with my deck of cards just to make sure that I'm on the right track. If you wanted to, if you had a larger one, you could go ahead and start increasing here if you needed to make it bigger. You can also work this portion in the color work chart. I just wanted a solid base. So we are now beginning round 5 with 3 waistcoat stitches of endless C. And then we're going to not finish that 3rd stitch, but add in our next color. So in this case, we're going to pretend it's Pacific and work 3 stitches with Pacific. And again, every time you're changing colors, the stitch before you don't want to end, you want to end it with the new color. That just kind of helps. I'm not really sure why, but it helps the color changes look a lot smoother. So there we're ending our 2nd set of 3 with Pacific, or with endless C, and then we're doing 3 waistcoat stitches, but before we finish that 3rd one, we're going to grab our other color. So as you can see, I am carrying the yarn behind and making sure that my hook goes under that yarn that I'm carrying, so the inside of this bag actually does not have any floats at all. Unless there's one that I missed, which I'm sure there's always a couple. But as long as when I'm inserting my hook for that waistcoat stitch, I'm going underneath the yarn that's not being used, it's capturing it inside that stitch, and I will not have any intentional floats in this work, which is nice. It helps me keep my tension better, so I'm not constantly trying to adjust, and yeah. Especially on color changes where I've got a tail where I'm cutting the color, I'll just work that tail in along with the unused yarn as well so that I can capture the tails and have less weaving in to do. It's really a lazy man's color work. Like, I tried to make it as easy on myself as possible. Okay, so now we just carry around. This is round 5, and we are going to end this round with a slip stitch and then a chain 1, and then start round 6. It's really, it's just like this for the rest of the time. We'll work 3 rounds in this same pattern, and then we'll work the next 3 rounds with Pacific and Overcast, so our lighter blue and our gray, and carry on for 5 total repeats of these little squares. So we'll end up with 19, we'll end on row 19. So we've got our foundation rounds, and then we'll work 15 rounds of our chart. And in the pattern, there is a chart and there's also written instructions where I just do Pacific 3, Overcast 3, repeat around. You just want to make sure, the great thing is you don't have to count anymore because you're repeating the same 3 squares over and over and over again, so you're always going to come out with 48. But anyway, I will skip ahead. You get the gist of the color switches. I'll skip ahead to perhaps row 8, where we're picking up our next color. So here we are at the end of round 7, and I've cut my endless C color because I'm not going to be using it for the next 3 rounds and I don't want to have to deal with it. So I'm finishing that round with a slip stitch and a chain 1, And now this color is going to switch over, and that was a fly. It's January. How is there a fly in here? So I'm going to work my 3 stitches and not finish, and I'm going to pick up Overcast to finish that stitch. And then for this first stitch of my next square, I'm just going to work both ends of the Overcast together to kind of lock it in place. I don't find that it's too obtrusive to have that double thickness just for this one stitch. So I'm going to do my 3 stitches. And as you can see, I'm carrying Endless Sea, the tail, in with the my other unused yarn. I lie. I definitely forgot Pacific. I forgot to bring it along with me, so I'll have a little float there, but that's not too bad. Thankfully, we're just putting cards in here, so there's nothing to get stuck. So now we're working rounds 8 through 10 in this same pattern, switching colors every 3 stitches, and slowly figuring out how to not have everything get quite so tangled. But when you're switching colors so frequently, it's really hard. Eventually I get into a good habit of how I hold one and then swap it with the other one, so I'm not continuously making more and more twist, but I don't always do that, and sometimes I just have to let my work untwist itself at the end of a round. The great thing is, since we're only doing 3 rounds of each repeat, sometimes you can just kick the can and cut your thread and unwind it at the end. Am I a terrible person? Maybe. Okay, so I think that's enough of that. Carry on until you reach round 19. We will have our gingham pattern completed. We will now be working in rows to start the reading mat portion of our bag, and we'll be turning our work at the end of each row. This section is worked with the Catherine's wheel stitch, and you can make it really as long as you want to cover as many cards as you need. I'm going to reattach Endless Sea in the 44th stitch around, and then I'm just going to start working the Catherine's wheel stitch. So I will skip 2 stitches, make 7 double crochets in the next space, and once I've finished that shell of 7 double crochets, I'm going to skip 2 stitches. Now we'll begin the repeat. So we're going for a total of 4 shells. So single crochet, skip 2, make 7 double crochets in the next, skip 2. I'm going to slip stitch around the front of the bag, so we actually won't be turning our work for this one row, just because I didn't want to cut and reattach and slip stitch across later. I figured while I was here at the end of the round, I would just go ahead and slip stitch. So I've reached the round end of row 1. So now we are going to begin row 2. This row is going to be filling in the spaces on either side of our shells and in between. To start with, we're going to chain 3, and we're going to start 3 double crochets, but not pull through the last loop. So 1, 2, 3. So each start is leaving a loop on our hook, and then we'll draw through all of the loops on our hook and chain 1. This closes that cluster. So now we'll chain 3 and single crochet in your next stitch. This will be the top of the shells from the previous row. Chain 3, and now we're starting 7 double crochets. So 1, 2, and we'll end up with 8 loops total on our hook. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then yarn over and pull through all the loops, chain 1 to close, and then chain 3, and then we're going to single crochet in our next stitch, which is the top of the shell. We're going to repeat this all the way across. So that's our second inverted shell. We're going to finish that off with a chain 3 and a single crochet, and then start our next one for 3 total inverted shells across. And I slip stitched there where I should have single crocheted, but it will be fine. Now for our last little piece, we're going to chain 3, start 3 double crochets, yarn over and pull through all of our loops on our hook, and chain 1 to close the cluster and turn. So that is our second row done. For the third row, we're going to be making another half of a shell, chain 3, and then we're going to make 4 double crochets in that first chain 1 space there. So we're actually finishing each of these double crochets. We're making 4 full double crochets in that one tiny little space, and then we're going to single crochet into that single crochet at the top of the shell that we made in the last round. Now we want to make 7 double crochets in the chain 1 closure in the inverted shell beneath. So in that same little chain 1 that closes the cluster, we're going to make 7 double crochets. So what we're making here is 3 shells and then half shells on either side. So once you're done with your 7 double crochets, single crochet in the single crochet at the top of the shell. And then repeat this across. Single crochet in that same single crochet, and make 1 more shell here. At the end of row 3, we're going to make 4 double crochets in the final chain 1 closure. So where those 3 double crochets came together in a cluster in the last round, we're going to make 4 double crochets in that same space. And then just chain 1 and turn for the last row of our Catherine wheel repeat. So there you have the first 3 rows, turning the work. Now I'm chaining 3 and starting 7 double crochets through this valley. Once I've started 7 double crochets, I will have 8 loops on my hook, yarn over and pull through all 8, chain 1 to close the cluster, and then chain 3. Then we will single crochet into the top of this shell. Then just repeat that across 4 times and you will get to the end of row 4, where we will just single crochet in the last stitch of the row, chain 1 and turn. So we're making 4 inverted clusters, starting our 7 double crochets, pulling through, chain 1 to close, chain 3, single crochet. Once you've reached the end of row 4, we're going to repeat rows 1 through 4 5 times, and then you want to work row 1 one last time so that you end up with 4 shells at the end of your work. So carry on my way. This is my favorite card from this deck because it's the death of rats and no one can tell me otherwise. Squeak. Anyway, I will meet back up with you when you have repeated these a total of 5 times for 20 total rows of Catherine's wheel. Okay, I am doing my last row 1, so I've done 1 through 4 5 times, and then I'm finishing with one last repeat of row 1. This should give us 21 rows, and then we can start with row 22. Row 22 is where we're going to start making that triangle shape and bringing things to a close so we can have a little envelope style. So I am doing my 7 double crochets, a single crochet, and turning my work one more time. Now I'm going to slip stitch 4 times until I reach the top of the very first shell. Now I'm going to chain 3 and start 7 double crochets to make an inverted shell to fill in that space. So 1, 2, why am I counting? You've done this 57 million times by this point. So we're doing 7 double crochets, chaining 1 to close that cluster, and we're working just 3 of these across. So this is our final cluster in row 22. We're going to do our 7 double crochet starts, pull through all the loops on the hook, chain 1 to close, chain 3, and then single crochet in the top of our last shell. Then we will chain 1 and turn our work. For the next row, we're going to be making the tops of these 3 shells. So we will start with making 7 double crochets in the chain 1 closure of that first inverted shell. Once we've done these 7 double crochets, we'll single crochet into the single crochet at the top of the previous shell and repeat to make a total of 3 shells across. This is a very long stitch. I like it because you get a lot of length fast because each row is very tall, but man, those 7 double crochets take up a lot of time. Okay, so 1 single crochet, and then we'll start our 7 double crochet shell, and this is the last one, so we're only doing 3. And at the end of this one, we will chain 1 and turn. Since at the start of row 24, we're at the base of a shell, we are going to once again slip stitch 4 times to get to the top of our first shell. And then we're going to fill in our 2 valleys with 2 inverted shells. So slip stitch 4 times, and I'm going to chain 3, start 7 double crochets, yarn over and pull through all loops, chain 1 to close my cluster, chain 3, and single crochet into the top of that middle shell there. As you can see, since we're not doing those outside half shells, we are coming together and making a little triangle. So we'll just continue in the next row. We're going to make the tops of these 2 shells, and then we'll fill in the valley and then make our final shell. Okay, so we are on row 26 and I'm slip stitching 4 times, and now we are going to make our inverted shell cluster. And then on the next and final row, we are going to finish off this shell and leave us with one final wheel at the end of our triangle. So I'm just pulling through, chain 1, chain 3, and single crocheting in the top of that last shell. Chain 1 and turn. And now we're going to make 7 double crochets in that chain 1 closure, and then just slip stitch at the very end and cut our tail and pull through. So I say this is the last one because I do think that maybe you could end here and not do the shells on the outside. If you want to carry on, carry on. If you want to stop here and do some sort of other decorative edging, that's fine too. So I'm just kind of slip stitching and chaining one there to secure my end, cutting it, and pulling my tail through. Just need to weave that in. But I think you could do any sort of edge on this, but I will show you. So as you can see, we already have the width here to lay out cards if we wanted to just do a simple edging on down the sides. Or if you want to carry on, I'll be doing a scalloped edge to repeat the kind of Catherine's wheel pattern and give it a little more flair. Before I start on the scalloped edge, I went ahead and chained just 100 chains, and I'm going to pull that through the whole of our last shell and then pull the ends through and just use this as a tie. I wanted to do this before I started the scallops just so I could get an idea of what this looked like without the edging. So we've got that, and I need to actually weave in my ends. If you'd like to do the scalloped edges, I'm going to reattach my Endless Sea yarn right in the middle, right at the end of row 20. So right before I do my final repeat of round 1, I'm going to just secure my yarn there. And then what I'm going to do is finish the other half of the shell for each of the shells down the side. So I'm going to do 7 double crochets into each half shell portion, and then single crochet into the middle of the in-between shells. It's easier to visualize with my hand not in the way. So once I've done 7, I'm going to find the middle part of the wheels below and single crochet in there, and then make 7 double crochets in the half wheel, the next half wheel. And then I'm just going to carry this on all the way down. Once I reach the bag, I'm going to make my last single crochet and then slip stitch, and then just cut the yarn, pull through, and secure it. Other side, I'm going to reattach my yarn at the base where the bag meets the mat and work up the other way so that the right sides are both facing the right way. So I'm just going to go into that first single crochet there and chain 1 to lock everything in place, and then we're going to work 7 double crochet shells with a single crochet in between all the way back up the bag. So 7 double crochet in where these 2 half shells meet, and then skip to the middle of the next 2 shells and single crochet. There's a little bit of guesswork here of where you want to put that single crochet, but whatever looks best to you. Is that helpful? So you can see where we've got the whole wheels. I'm just going to put it into that space between the rows there and then work my 7 double crochets. Now that we've finished our scallops and secured our yarn, we can pull that through and weave in all of our ends. I'm not going to do that though because I'm a lazy human. So I'll put in as a final demonstration, the cards do indeed still fit. And then now when you roll it up, you get a nice little scalloped edge on either side. And I'll tie my little bag shut. I do think I did 100 chains. I think you could go further if you wanted to use them both as a tie instead of taking them opposite ways round like I do. Yeah, once you weave in your ends, you are all done. But I think it's a cute little envelope style with a little bow. I really enjoyed Catherine's wheel. This is the first time I've used it in any project, but it's just, I know there's also variations where you do the 3 single crochets in the middle, but that's not the one I learned, so I didn't use it. So we've got kind of a nice like starry effect almost with the wheels, and I'll just lay out some cards. As you can see that they fit quite nicely. They are all encompassed on the tops and bottoms. And then I will get out my handy dandy The Other One's Tarot Guide. If you don't get that joke, there's 3 witches in a coven. The mother, the maiden, and the other one. Because you don't say, yeah. So anyway, I got a little tarot guide so that I can help myself when doing readings because my memory is that of a goldfish. So I hope you enjoyed this very lengthy video guide, and I hope that your tarot cards find a comfy new home. Please subscribe to see what bubbles out of the cauldron next, and join us on more crafty adventures. Also download our app, please and thank you. The Other One's Tarot Guide, available in the iOS Apple App Store. Bye!